There are certain unwritten mantras of our age that you have to believe if you want the media class and the political class to think you're a quote-unquote good person. Islam is a religion of peace is one. Love is another, for when gay men want to ram all sorts of things up their rectum. Diversity is our strength is another. It's perhaps the last one that we hear the most about in this day and age. We're supposed to believe that diversity somehow strengthens national unity while boosting the economy and creating a more interesting, quote-unquote, enriched lived experience for everybody in the UK. Yet in this video, I hope to show that diversity doesn't actually celebrate culture or cultures at all. In fact, it ruins them while destroying nations at the same time. And just a note for the censors, I'm not doing this as I hate other cultures, that's another mantra of the modern age. It's because I love the cultures of the world. I've taken quite an interest in Vedic philosophy, Sufism, Shintoism, Confucianism in China, and there's lots to learn in there. But I also love the culture of my own historic homelands, as well as the nation I come from. Henceforth, I believe it's perfectly legitimate to inquire what's best for my country, as well as for the world, rather than believe the globalist liberal authoritarian propaganda. Now, firstly, if these themes are of interest to you, please do consider subscribing to the channel. The best place to start is what is culture? Now, this is a bit of a mouthful, but culture is essentially the artistic, philosophical, religious, spiritual, political, familial, sexual, social, and historical understandings of a people. Culture is generally something specific rather than universal, which is why you might have European culture versus Asian culture. Or it can be granular too, such as English culture versus French culture. That cultural difference has been spoken to in the quip that where the French have revolutions, the English have humour. So in essence, culture is a way in which a people make sense of who it is. It's a way the deceased, the living, and the unborn build stability and meaning. When that process is done properly, it creates the genius of the world, Greek philosophy, German classical music, English common law, and so on. Each of the aforementioned things aren't forced on a people by some tyrant nor some communist state. They come from the earth itself and they become the gold of a people. Now, different cultures carry different types of gold and some more than others, but they are unique to the environment which it came from. This leads us to the next core point. What is multiculturalism? Multiculturalism is a leftist post-Marxist political doctrine which seeks to enforce equality amongst different groups. The idea here, such as in Britain, is that the host culture should be eroded so many cultures have equal footing amongst the populace. This, in their eyes, will create a vibrant and enriched land. Now, the problem with this is immediately obvious. If you bring people from every corner of the earth into one place, the present inhabitants are clearly going to say, our history is here and it's being eroded. But the progressive leftists were prepared for this. First of all, they eroded British culture before they enforced multiculturalism. Secondly, if you complain about it at all, you'll be called an evil colonizer. And thirdly, you'll be called an unbeliever, full of hate against anybody different from any other country. And this shows us how multiculturalism has been enforced in the UK. As we explored earlier, for culture to work, it's rooted in the histories of a people over time. However, if you remove that, the real power structure that's left is leftist ideology. If you go to the root of this leftist ideology, you'll see that fundamentally they believe that man is godless and rootless, essentially just a blank slate that's controlled only by power relations. Many Marxist and post-Marxist thinkers of the 20th century, most notably Gramsci and the Frankfurt School, believed that culture was how the Western world enforced its power on its citizens. These thinkers thought that the traditional coordinates of a people, that is, religion, the nation, the family, the institutions, were all totally meaningless, and that if they could take control of the culture, they'd have the political power. Yet, like all leftist commie ideals, it didn't create this emancipated, enlightened people. It's just made a mess. Yet at this point, we've lost our cultural identity so much, many people can't see what's happened. Cue a load of angry, blue-haired, useful idiots who supposedly love culture, backing the very ideology that destroys cultures. What I mean by this is the swathes of young people who will travel to India or China or Japan or somewhere in Africa and marvel at the wonders of culture there and the amazing people. Yet ask them about their culture back home and all they'll be able to say is it's oppressive and violent and needs to be destroyed. Yet what these little anti-capitalist darlings often fail to see is that they themselves are the front line of defense for the global capitalist system. After all, the real power structure here isn't the woke ideology, it's actually money and the global financial system. The globalist international finance capitalists love woke multiculturalism. Why? Because it's only a traditional culture that puts value in its people, and organised conscious people that is, that can stand up to it. And of course, if you challenge any of this, their army of blue-haired brainwashed morons will come out and call you a fascist, which is essentially the modern secular word for pure evil. So if you value tradition and culture, not just for your own people, but for all people, you cannot support multiculturalism. It's a betrayal of such culture. Secondly, I believe if you support British tradition and believe Britain is a good thing, you should be wary of the free market too. This is why Nigel Farage isn't the end answer for Britain. Yes, on the culture, he's right on many things, but ultimately, he's a Thatcherite when it comes to economics. Remember, we're not in the 1980s anymore. We're in the 21st century with global multinationals that are more powerful than the vast majority of states around the world, each of them pushing woke ideology and the globalist liberal agenda. This doesn't mean I think we shouldn't back Farage in the upcoming elections, nor afterwards when he has his inevitable shot at becoming PM. But that's because, unlike the media who tells us that Farage is using us, we should use him as a battering ram to break the present system. Only after that have we got a shot at some sort of civilizational rebirth via which we can take on the globalist machine. Now, this is a bit of a longer video, so thank you for watching if you made it all the way to the end, and do let me know your thoughts down below. If you're new, please do consider subscribing to the channel.